Hello, my name is Ashley, this is Faithful Rattos, and welcome or welcome back. So in today's video, we are going to be talking about something that is very seasonal, very on topic for this time of year, and that is keeping your rats cool in the summer, which is on everybody's mind. And I'm already starting to see these questions popping up. In the UK last week, we had a bit of a heat wave where you were seeing temperatures of up to 26 degrees, which is particularly hot, especially for the end of April, beginning of May. And lots of people are rightly worried about keeping their rats cool. Now, I will say in different countries and different parts of the world, this may not be as big as a concern because maybe you're used to the temperatures, and also, most importantly, a lot of places that are used to the heat and the temperatures have infrastructure built to keep them cool and to keep their houses cool. Whereas in the UK, our infrastructure is sometimes really old, but also designed to keep us warm because most of the time it's mild to cold here, and these extreme temperatures we're seeing because of climate change are just not normal to be consistently seeing. And our buildings are not designed that way. We do not have built-in aircon and things like that. We have built-in central heating. That's what we have. So a lot of our houses have been designed to keep the heat in, which can make these extremely hot summers quite difficult to deal with. So I have some tips and tricks to keeping your rat room cool, keeping your rats cool, and all the things. First of all, let's talk about proactive measures, and these are ways to keep your room cool before it gets too hot for your rats to deal with. And these are really important to be thinking about way before the heat starts. This is something to start doing now whilst we've got these mild to warm temperatures. So the first thing is considering where is the coolest room in your house or your flat. These will usually be the ones that are north facing, so they don't get any direct sun. So in my flat, that is my bedroom. My bedroom is north facing, so we don't get any direct sun in that room, so it is therefore the coolest room of the flat year round. South facing rooms will be the hottest room in the house, and east and west facing are pretty similar, although I would argue that west facing can be a little bit warmer than east facing because the sun is setting in the afternoon that side and you've already got the heat of the day built up. So maybe west is the second warmest facing room, and then you've got east and then north. So things you can do to monitor your temperature in your room so you know what the baseline is for those rooms in your house. Really simple, get a little mini thermometer. I have one of these, it's on one of my rat's cage. I have them dotted around the house so I can sort of tell and gauge the temperature in each room of my house and notice the trends all year round to see where is the warmest and coolest parts of the flat. To keep our rat room cool, which is this room, which is, as I mentioned, west facing, we have blackout curtains that keep the heat out, and we also have UV film on the windows that reflects heat as well. It also adds another privacy layer so people can't see in during the day, which is really nice, but it is really helpful. And we put it on last year, and I definitely saw 2024 compared to 2023, the temperatures outside were pretty even, like pretty similar, but inside, I think we used the aircon much less than we did the previous year, so I think that really does help. And the most important thing is to keep windows and doors closed on the hot days. And this sounds counterproductive because you think, opening the door will get some fresh air in. However, if we're on days where it's really hot outside and it's hotter outside than it is inside, opening the door is letting the cold air out and letting the warm air in. It's not going to cool you down any, and it can be counterproductive. So on those days, it's really important to keep the windows and doors closed to keep the cold air in and prevent more heat from coming in. Now, on to cooling measures for the room. So the opposite of keeping the cold air in is letting the cold air in. And so often in the summer, the evenings and the nighttime is much cooler. So opening doors and windows at this time lets the cooler in and brings the room temperature back down before it's time then to sort of wake up again and have the sun streaming in. So that's a really important thing to consider. We also can use fans to our advantage to blow hot air out during these cooler times. We also can do something really clever, and that is to put wet towels or wet cloth between the fan and the rats, and this will blow sort of cool air towards the rats. Now, you don't want the fan to be directly facing the rats, but if you are sort of having sweeping cold air towards them, that is really helpful. And also something to consider is a dehumidifier. Often extra humidity will make it feel hotter and make it feel more imposing. And so that is something that you can consider if you have particularly high humidity levels alongside the heat. Now, some cooling measures for the rats themselves. These generally are things they can use to self-regulate their heat. They're very smart. They know what they're doing. Generally, if your rats are all cuddling up together, they're not worried about being too hot, but sometimes they can be a little bit silly. And so here are some things you can provide them with for them to self-regulate their temperature. So cold tiles and plates, you can even put these in the fridge or freezer for that extra effect. Frozen food is another good one. Water activities, pea fishing, something similar to that, or just a lot of water in their cage they can choose to go into. Fresh cold water in bottles on rotation. You can, keep them in the freezer and swap them out periodically. You also want to consider what you're giving them to sleep and hide in. You don't want to be giving them fluffy, fleecy hammocks, cotton, open hammocks, open hides that aren't going to trap heat in. There's also really cool hammocks on the market by a company called Rat-a-tat Toys, I think, and they sell these really lightweight, thin hammocks that have a pocket that you can put like a frozen water bottle in to keep the hammock cool, but they can still have their soft bedding type of environment that they really like. There are a myriad of other things you can do with your rats to keep them cool when it is warmer. Most of these things will include water, frozen things, keeping hydrated, that sort of stuff. Now, I will say you need to monitor your rats and make sure they are okay. You will see that rats, when it's warmer, they become less active and they tend to sleep and sit a lot more than they would in normal or colder temperatures. And that is fine, but you need to look out for the signs of heat stroke, which are lethargy, being red, so their ears and their nose and their feet, and also their balls, if they're male, can tell you how warm they're feeling. If they are dehydrated or they're showing signs of like serious lethargy, this is something to consider going to the vet about. And if you see a rat is particularly overheated, something that will help them cool down faster is to dip their tail in water, because this is where they lose a lot of their heat, and then they do use their tail for thermal regulation. So if you dip or spray their tail with water, that can help them cool down as well. But if you are concerned, if they are showing any worrying signs like lethargy, that it is really important you get them to the vet so they can properly deal with it. And the last thing to talk about in this video is aircon. Now, I'm talking about aircon in the way that, portable aircon units like I have. So aircon units can be wonderful, but if you use them when you are out, they can risk malfunctioning. And this can be the tube falling out of the window and pushing the hot air out into the room. This can be turning off suddenly or breaking or any number of things that can mean that they stop working. And this can be a risk because it can make the room even hotter, because the air that they blow out is very, very warm, because obviously it's sucking that air out of the room and blowing it out. So that is a really important thing to consider. Make sure the tube is very secure where it is. Make sure you're doing routine checks to make sure it's working properly. And if you do have to leave, don't leave for really, really extended periods of time during the hot months. You could have an electronic thermometer that can sort of tell you the highs and lows and what's been happening when you're not there. But that is one thing to consider when it comes to the aircon. And the other thing to consider with the aircon is you need to help it out. An aircon is not going to be able to get a room that is 27 degrees down to 17 degrees when it's 28 degrees outside. It's just not going to be possible, but it will help to cool the room down, and it can help. You do have to help it. So if you've got your aircon on, don't have all the windows open. It's not going to be able to help. If you have an enclosed room that you're using the aircon in, close the doors, and that will keep the cold air in that one room and obviously bring the temperature down much faster. If the aircon is only working to cool down one room, it's going to work much faster than if you're trying to cool down the whole house with it, or the whole outside if you've got the windows and doors open and things like that. So yeah, those are my tips for keeping rats cool in the summer. I hope it was helpful. Now, it was very specific to my experience being here in the UK. Now, other hot countries like Australia or places in Africa and South America, I really don't have experience. And Some of these tips may be helpful and others might not be. I will say that animals born in those countries already have a higher tolerance to the heat than, say, rats born in this country, because that's how people work. People born in hot countries have a better tolerance to the heat than people born in cooler countries, because their bodies are used to regulating in that temperature. So do keep that in mind. Do keep safe. Do keep yourself safe. Stay hydrated when it comes to hot weather and stuff. Sun cream, all the things. Don't take your rats outside, even if you're tempted to. And yeah, I hope this was really helpful. If you have any more thoughts, comments, questions, suggestions, or anything else, leave it down in there in the comments. Stick around and subscribe for more tips and tricks, information, vlogs, maybe some baby rats soon. And yeah, thanks very much for watching. Bye!